Inevitably, inexorably, Bernie Sanders lost the primary vote. He failed to become the Democratic nominee in the presidential election. How and why did this happen? For two very simple, but I dare say profound reasons that have been discussed at greater length on this channel in the past, back when I thought that the analysis might have some small chance of actually changing the course of events as they unfolded, with, again, all the inevitability and all the inexorability of a can of tomato soup rolling down a staircase. Thunk, thunk, thunk. The first thing is something that Bernie Sanders has in common with myself and has in common with Mitt Romney. In this life, you often have to choose if you'd rather lose the game playing by your own rules or win the game playing by everyone else's. What do I mean? Well, take a look at Mitt Romney. There are many snippets of interviews you can see here on YouTube from back in the days when Mitt Romney had a chance at becoming president of the United States, and they were asking him, either politely or impolitely, was he willing to reflect on Mormonism, the religion of his forefathers, but not the religion of his voters, not the religion of his constituency, not the religion of the country he was trying to lead. Was he able and willing to reflect on Mormonism and, find fault in it, admit wrongdoing, maybe admit atrocities in the past? Was he able to criticize or even reject this religion for the sake of that greater good that all politicians are supposed to aspire to represent? And Mitt Romney's answer was no, 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 no. Mitt Romney would rather lose the election adhering to his own principles. Mitt Romney would rather lose playing by his own rules than win playing by everyone else's. If Mitt Romney really wanted to be president of the United States, he should be willing to reject Mormonism and convert to Judaism. He should be willing to go and get circumcised and wear a yarmulke. I'm not joking, all right? If you're not willing to take your personal sense of pride that you still have the same religion as your forefathers and throw it away, why are you even playing the game? I mean, this isn't dirty. It gets way dirtier than this, right? If you want to play to win. And if the polling shows that what would really help Mitt Romney would be to reject the Mormon faith and recognize the much more profound truth found in Maimonides and the first 5 books of the Old Testament, he should embrace that wholeheartedly. See what that does for his vote count and support in the Republican Party. Because it was a huge problem that Mitt Romney was attached to this somewhat menacing and genuinely scandalous history of the Mormon faith in the United States of America. The historical record, the historical reality of what Mormonism is shameful. Okay? Bernie Sanders was in exactly the same position with socialism. To a lesser extent, he was in the same position even with his dotted line connections to communism. All right? Would it really have been so hard for Bernie Sanders to do exactly what Elizabeth Warren did and say that no, he doesn't represent socialism, no, he doesn't represent communism, that no, in a meaningful sense, he embraces and accepts capitalism, right? That's not the kind of guy Bernie Sanders has been. Bernie Sanders has always been the kind of guy who'd rather lose playing by his own rules than win playing by everyone else's. Okay, so we knew that from day one. We knew that 4 years ago. We knew that 10 years ago. This has always been Bernie Sanders' character. Why couldn't Bernie Sanders just join the Democrat Party? In case you didn't know, Bernie Sanders remained an independent. He remained not a member of the Democrat Party, but seeking the Democrat nomination. It's completely surreal. It's completely absurd. So he wants to cling to this principle where he doesn't recognize, he doesn't approve of the very party whose approval he's seeking, whose nomination he's seeking. This shows the same inflexible attitude. He wants to play games with words like democratic socialism and social democrat, right? And nobody wants to vote for, right? He's not willing to come out and say what, again, Elizabeth Warren says or any other politician says. He's not willing to come out and say, hey, socialism and communism may have been the religion of his forefathers, in the same sense that Mitt Romney comes from a Mormon background, but that's in the past now, that now and for the future, Bernie Sanders represents something different. Bernie Sanders maybe represents a version of compassionate capitalism that's not going to be alienating to voters. That would have been the way to play to win. But from day one, Bernie Sanders was deeply committed to playing to lose. And I said at the outset, this is something he has in common with Mitt Romney. I find fault myself in the same way. Every so often, people give me advice on how to have a hit video on YouTube. Of course, sometimes people are just idiots. They're giving you terrible advice. But once in a while, I get a suggestion. It's good advice. It would work. Get me 10,000 views or something on a video. But I'm not willing to do it. Like, I'd rather lose playing the game by my rules. I'd value my own sense of integrity, et cetera, more than I value winning playing by those other rules, whereby I'm being encouraged to play the game. Okay? Point 2 is real simple, but the implications for each of us, it's profound. Bernie Sanders started this race not just being further to the left than the majority of the American people. He was further to the left than the majority of members of the Democrat Party. So right from the outset, when you combine that with point 1, that he's an inflexible, unwilling to compromise, unwilling to adapt person, that he's a person who's unwilling to even adapt. He's unwilling to even use new rhetoric. He's unwilling to even change the packaging, the wrapping that's on the set of policy proposals he's pursuing. Right there, you have a very clear path to failure, and there's really no clear path to victory whatsoever. But what do you do? Let me ask you, what do you do in a democratic society if you know that now and for the future, for your whole lifetime, you're always going to be in the minority? You're always going to be on the losing side. Now, we have a contrast. For most of you in the audience, you were alive when this happened. If you think about the status of gay rights and homosexuality under Bill Clinton, and then the status of gay rights and homosexuality under President Obama, say, moving forward just a few years, year by year, all the politicians changed their position on this. And at the time Donald Trump was elected, even Donald Trump made very clear statements that he supports equal rights for gay people, gay marriage, and so on, that he's not an opponent of gay marriage and gay rights. That was within the Republican Party, a somewhat controversial aspect of the candidacy of Donald Trump. So on that particular issue, he's not right wing. Okay, the gay rights issue went from being very marginal, powerless, weak, voiceless, a minority within a minority, to being a dominant, victorious discourse. Okay? For most of us, for most of the people in this audience at least, the things we care passionately about put us in a voiceless, powerless minority within our societies, and we know we'll be there, definitely for the next 20 years, maybe for the next 50 years. You know what? It sounds absurd to say, what happens if you live in a society where nobody cares about healthcare reform? Well, you may, whatever the issues are you care passionately about. I care passionately about the fact that every day hundreds of thousands of cows are killed with a bolt gun to the head, and I live in a society where absolutely nobody else around me cares about that. I think it's a very obvious injustice. To use an example where I'm really in a small minority, I think it's a very obvious injustice, and it's a calamity that gambling is legal and that the government makes money out of gambling. I don't see how that's morally acceptable or why anyone should make excuses for it. I mean, it's even worse that the government makes money out of this as opposed to being a purely private sector or purely criminal enterprise. There are all kinds of things that, to me, are outrages, and that it seems to me if 51% of people in a democracy had sensible, rational, detached views about it, we ought to make rapid progress on all these issues. And above all else, let me just say, I'm an atheist, And more than just an atheist, I'm actually a nihilist, or a nihilistic atheist. So I'm within a minority of a minority of a minority and completely alienated from discourses on all kinds of issues, including public education, health, diet, what have you, ecology, and so on, right? What is the way forward when you know that if you're not going to be dishonest, if you're not going to be Machiavellian, if you're going to be a person of principle, if you're going to be honest and consistent, the way Bernie Sanders was, where you know that puts you in a position where you'll always lose, where you'll always be the minority with the minority, and the issues you care about may put you in a much smaller, weaker, voiceless minority than Bernie Sanders, okay? If you've been watching my channel for a long time, you already know the answer to that question. There is a way forward in a democracy, right? It's the same way forward that was taken by Mothers Against Drunk Driving, an issue that a puny percentage of people care about. Almost nobody cares about drunk driving. They built one of the most, effective, influential foundations in the history of the United States of America or in the history of the world. They really changed not just legislation. They changed the way people all over America spend their time on Friday and Saturday nights. They changed the way the taxi industry works, the way the entertainment industry works. They gradually have changed the culture of alcohol consumption, of driving, of reducing the number of deaths on the roads, so on and so forth. Okay? It's an issue that only a small minority can care about. But within a democratic society, within a pluralistic society, with freedom of speech and free markets and fundraising and institution building and community building, you can make a difference. You can play to win. But the way to win, the way forward, is not going to be following in the footsteps of Bernie Sanders. The footsteps of Bernie Sanders from day one, clearly and obviously, could lead only to failure.